Former mean girls, what finally made you reevaluate how you treated people? I got hit by a bus. Someone actually told me and I listened and saw what an awful human I was. It was just too much effort to remember who I was mad at. Now I can't even remember what I had for breakfast. Not a mean girl but an aggressive child. Turns out it was mental illness from brain damage, and I needed to be given medication and therapy. But none of the adults in my life that had the power responsibility to get me it were tuned in enough to what was going on to notice it. Plus, if your parents are fucked up, then you acting fucked up is just normal to them, and not something they think needs to be addressed. I ended up finding that help for myself in my late teens and early adulthood. A friend who never speaks ill of anyone told me I was spoiled and privileged. It hit me like a slap in the face, and at the time I had a tantrum, but they were probably right. I now try to have more grace and acknowledge my privilege. I wasn't a mean girl, but I definitely lacked empathy and thought life fell into easy right-wrong situations up until I was 19. I had this ridiculous conviction in what was right and wrong, and that people who stepped outside of my narrow life experience view deserved my righteous anger. What made me snap out of it was finally gaining real life experience, going through no-win scenarios, and getting a taste of my own medicine. Being judged criticality for circumstances I couldn't actually control. But the biggest thing that made me snap out of it was getting a letter from myself when I was 14 years old. A middle school teacher had us write a letter that she would send to us when we were in college. She also had us give our friends surveys to take about each other, and one of the questions was, what would you change about OP if you could? All my friends had the same answer: OP gets angry too easily, and has a hard time seeing different points of view. Reading that answer over and over again quite literally flipped a switch in my brain. It was also incredibly smart of the teacher to keep those surveys until we were 18-19 years old, because as a 14-year-old I don't think I would have been able to take those answers and process them in a healthy way. Mine manifested as having strong feelings about things I had no business judging, or giving my opinion on starting at age 13. 2 kids and 2 decades later, I realize most people's opinions, including mine, are wrong and lack understanding of someone's background or a situation. My view on parenting even changed from having child 1 to child 2. I would get so annoyed with my kids' friends' parents for letting their child do Z's. Then along came my second child and my sanity was hanging on by a thread, and I too was allowing my children to do Z's. It's also why I hate the 8th sub. Lots of young people who haven't been chewed up and spit out by life are on there offering opinions on situations like parenting and marriage when they have experienced neither. Therapy worked like magic. Growing up, I didn't have some aha moment. Life just kicked me in the face enough times that I had to change. You lose friends, relationships, even opportunities when you're toxic. One day, I just looked around and realized I was alone because of my own actions. I met someone that reminded me a lot of myself. Specifically, they used to say a lot of the same things, and I did not like them. I didn't realize I was a mean girl. In the movie I thought I was in, my friends and I were the nerdy underdogs, so if we made fun of the popular kids, we were being edgy and cool, not mean. And yes, we were nerds, we were not the popular kids. But here's the thing, the popular kids never did anything to us. We put jokes about them in our stupid zine, and left copies around the school thinking we were the heroes for sticking it to those popular kids. And it was entirely unjustified. Those kids were never mean to us. We were the mean ones. What made me realize it was when one of those kids figured out we were behind the zine and confronted me, and he was so hurt. We'd worked on a class project previously. He thought we were friends. I still hate myself a little for it. People had been mean to me, so I developed it to cope. Then I had more self-compassion for myself, and it brought self-compassion to others. I find that I'm lonelier now that I'm not so mean or into gossip, because that's all my friends wanted to talk about. I'm over it, but I'm happier. A defining moment for me was about 2 years after high school, when a guy I knew in grade 12 randomly messaged me just to thank me for how I treated him with kindness in math class and how it had a huge impact on his self-worth. I was stunned to say the least. I remember just chatting with him in class, but never felt like I went out of my way to be nice to him, and to be honest, I probably would have forgotten he even existed had he never messaged me. It felt amazing knowing that simply being kind to this random boy in math class could have such a positive effect on his life, and I realized I wanted people to always leave interactions with me feeling good about themselves. He doesn't know it, but his message changed how I treat people from that point on. I was in grade 4. We had to write down a goal at the beginning of the school year. I wrote to be less catty, so I must have realized that I was a little brat, and that's not a nice type of person to be. In hindsight, that was the point where I started to be socially aware and develop empathy for people. The next few years of grade school, I remember calling out bullies when I witnessed them picking on other kids. They never had a comeback or reason for why they were treating someone like they didn't matter. One kid had a lazy eye, so bullies called him One-Eyed Wayne. But I saw that was really mean, so in front of everyone I would say, "What did he ever do to you? Why do you have a problem with him?" And they never had a response. It's nice to advocate for people. Being mean is wasted energy, and it's miserable to feel like you constantly have to prove you're better than someone to everyone else. Long story short, at the end of 4th grade, my teacher brought up the goals we had written down. She congratulated me for making the most significant improvement. "Thank you, Mrs. McLaughlin. Realized life isn't a high school drama, and being kind actually feels way better." Realizing that you truly have no idea what someone is going through, and how much of an impact being kind or not being kind for a moment can make on someone's day. I was bullied relentlessly as a younger child and then became somewhat of a bully as a teen, but it wasn't until years later that I realized I was being a bully. It just felt like I was being mean before they could be mean. It felt like if I didn't seem tough, that everyone would start picking on me again. So stupid looking back. I could have had so many more friends, but I was afraid they would reject me, so I purposely made myself off-putting and essentially rejected them first. I realized I can be a better human by stop drinking, eat healthy, exercise and take vitamin D. Vitamin D deficiency and depression are linked. The divorce was the catalyst. My husband cheated and I would blame myself. That turned into self-improvement. I still talk before I think sometimes, but I hardly ever argue anymore. I am a much better human being both inside and out. Lost 35 pounds and blood pressure. Vitamin D are at good levels. Sober. I wasn't mean on purpose, I just grew up undiagnosed. It wasn't until I grew up and actually learned how to be human did I realize how awful I was sometimes. I was never truly malicious though, so I guess that's something. I just lacked the social skills to know any better, but I did things that are generally considered frowned upon, you could say. It helped me become more self-aware as an adult, so now I make extra sure I'm as polite and respectful as possible.